Y2K was a crazy time because of the huge unknown regarding technology. It turned out to not really be a big deal, but it was a cultural phenomenon. So of course, there's now a movie about it. A24 gives us a disaster comedy reimagining what could have happened when the new millennium began. On the last night of 1999, two high school juniors crash a New Year's Eve party, only to find themselves fighting for their lives. So this stars Jaeden Martell, Rachel Zegler, Julian Dennison, Lachlan Watson, Eduardo Franco, Mason Gooding, and Fred Durst. Now, all except for Durst, they're all residents of a town that experiences a technological breakdown as soon as the clock strikes midnight, rendering computers sentient, hellbent on destroying all humans. Now, this is chock full of late 90s references. From the music, which personally was annoying to me because the soundtrack featured just about every overplayed song there was, reminding us all of the massive amount of one-hit wonders that took over mainstream radio during that time. But there's also the clothing, the lingo, even random people doing the Macarena in their front yard, which I am pretty sure had died out before '99. But that's not really a big problem within this particular movie. Now, this is 93 minutes, and somehow it manages to feel like 2.5. The beginning of the story was incredibly cringy and unfunny, which I was willing to overlook just in hopes that it would take a couple of beats to maybe find the groove, and then we'd be on track for some crazy mechanical mayhem. Yeah, that didn't happen, at least in terms of the production finding its groove. Almost every character we encounter is off-putting, making it very difficult to become endeared towards them, or simply even care. And the story needs us to on some level, because once the machines start wreaking havoc, and then people die, we should feel some sort of tension or anxiety for these characters. I was rooting for the machines. Jaeden Martell is his characteristically whiny and mumbling self, which he is in just about everything I've ever seen him in. He consistently looks down when he's talking, rarely ever making eye contact with the others, and he has this sorrowful demeanor regardless of what's going on. And I was trying to like his dynamic with Julian Dennison because they're best friends within the story, and they have a tight bond, but they're also so dysfunctional with each other that I didn't want to encourage their friendship. Now, one character I did like unexpectedly was played by Kyle Mooney, the director. He's this stoner named Garrett, and while he is sort of a mix of Troy from Reality Bites, Slater from Dazed and Confused, and Brian from Half Baked, just spouting supposed wisdom from behind this massive smoke cloud, he's entirely stereotypical. I mean, you know exactly who and what he is the second we meet him. But I did find his calm and blitz demeanor to be a bright spot within the ongoing idiocy. When I saw the trailer, especially once it showed the machines beginning to attack the partygoers, I thought this looked like a fun and violent comedy. Is it going to be stupid? Well, yeah, of course. But I wasn't prepared for how unfunny and annoyingly stale this actually is. I mean, the premise feels unique, at least from the trailer's perspective. But once we get into it, the story is pretty much a ripoff of a couple of Doctor Who episodes involving the Cybermen. And I'd much rather watch those again and again rather than this drivel. Now, obviously, there's also going to be practical effects and even some special effects within this so that machines can combine and then become walking threats to humanity. Outside of a couple of moments when you can see a person's leg within the inside of a haphazard collection of wires and appliances, the contraptions are creative, they're fun, and impressively built. I mean, it's great that there's very little, if any, CGI used for the machine mayhem. And even when we are shown computer graphics on the screens of the sentient killers, it feels very tangible and believable in terms of the graphic quality. I mean, it's very Lawnmower Man in style. And I especially enjoyed when weapons would be improvised from just everyday items, whether that be a CD or a drill controlled by a Tamagotchi. Also, I'm sure it goes without saying, but you need to suspend a ton of disbelief in this. Because while computers and tech like that, they can plausibly be hacked, it's much harder to believe a dishwasher or a blender would suddenly become bloodthirsty and start attacking the humans. That really is a non-issue because the story doesn't even stop down long enough to create believable scenarios. I mean, everything happens in rapid succession. The clock strikes midnight. The machines rise and start killing, some people escape and form a plan to stop the computers, and then there's a tiny battle of wits combined with a Fred Durst performance, then it's over. And that's what's so weird about this movie. Everything is rushed with very little development. And it's a short runtime, but it feels exceptionally long. I mean, I barely ever chuckled, let alone laughed. And the action, it was sparse, creating this uneven pace that never quite found the right speed. So overall, just like the hype around the tech fears at the beginning of the millennium, Y2K turns out to be a huge nothing burger, squandering a promising premise in favor of rushed storytelling, weak development, and cringeworthy dialogue. The story relies too heavily on derivative tropes and nostalgia to drive the narrative, forgetting that engaging or likable characters, a decent plot, and a consistent pace were also necessary to make this enjoyable. Despite having some creative practical effects, this is a massive waste of time. I liken this to a virus or malware. It's problematic, but also avoidable. There's sex and nudity, a ton of profanity, and a whole bunch of violence. I give Y2K 1/2 out of 5 couches. It has been quite a while since I have left the theater so disappointed. There you go. All right, so what's a film that you love that either came out at the turn of the century or has to do with computers, machines, or hacking? I'd love to know about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me. Almost had a brain fart there. I couldn't remember what I was trying to say.